Hey everybody, this is my second video going over multi-tracks for worship in Studio One. A couple things you'll need to know. I am using Studio One 3 Professional, so I will have some features you might not have if you have the basic version. Also, the screen record I'm using is causing me to not be able to click on some things within the program. I do not know why, but when we get to those points, I'll try to best explain what I'm doing because you might not be able to visually see depending on what I can or cannot click. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. If you haven't seen my original multi-track video, that might be a good place to start if you're a beginner. If you've already seen that video or have some experience with multi-tracks, then this would be the video for you. So I'm going to go ahead and bring open Studio One. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to put an entire set of music within one session. So ideally, if you're playing somewhere, if you're leading worship somewhere, you don't want to switch between sessions for new songs. So I'm going to show you how to have everything in one session so that it's available. You can switch quickly between them or move them around depending on what you need. Basically, the aim is flexibility. So I'm going to go ahead and name this acoustic set because that's what I'm going to be setting up today. We've got an acoustic set coming up. I do know the first tempo is 110, so I'm just going to go ahead and set it to the first tempo. That way I don't have to change it right when I get in. I don't want to stretch audio files. When you're working with a bunch of different tempos, that can be a pain. So just leave that unchecked. If you want to leave it on and you trust yourself to be careful within different BPMs that you're setting, perfect, whatever. But for our purposes today, we're dragging in multi-tracks that have already been edited to what they need anyway, so we're going to leave that unchecked. So press OK. Brings open a new session. So like I said, we're going to be bringing in other click tracks that have already been made. No constructing of the cues or clicks, whatever. We're all set to go. So all I'm going to be doing is dragging things in. Again, if you don't understand that, then check my first video, and I'll show you how to create what you're looking at here. So we've got the clicks and cues here. We're at the same tempo, 110. So all I'm going to do is copy and paste. So Command-C, and then I'm going to go over to the song acoustic set. And right at the beginning, I'm going to paste. Oops. There we go. Okay. So everything lined up. Looks like they're all perfectly fine. I'm going to rename them. Since we're dealing with multiple songs, I'm going to want to have everything really clean, really organized, color-coded too. I usually just do these in white. So, oops, cancel that. Okay, so let me just test. A good test, if it looks good, visually I can tell that it's all in place, but another way you can test is by turning on the metronome and playing it with the click track you have made. And yeah, so everything is lined up, so we're all good. I will go ahead and drag the song in too. That's great for practice purpose. Also, you can see that here, that's all of my excess, and it kind of lands on a weird spot on the timeline. So I'm just going to drag it to the fourth beat, copy it from there, and then post it in. So, after you do that, you could totally, you can bring that excess back. For our purpose here, it doesn't really matter. There's nothing there. This track, I'm going to name Song Track because I'm going to save a lot of space putting all the songs on the same track instead of having a new track for every song that comes in. By then, you're adding, 8 to 10 extra tracks for no reason. So, usually I'll go -5 on these because whenever you're playing, if it's going through everyone's ears, you've got the click track going through everyone's ears. Sometimes we need to check the part of the song. You're going to start playing it, and you're going to find every time you do it, they've got the click track to a level where the song is going to be blasting loud. So this does away with it a little bit, but I've found, generally speaking, -5 dB will put it to a level where it's competing with the click track, but it's not deafening loud. Yeah, so that'll work. At that point, you're all set for your first song. Of course, you know that. You're looking at this and you can see that it's done. So I'm going to show you the process to add another song in at the end. So we've got a good amount of trail here, 2 measures. That seems like it would probably be an appropriate amount of time. Yeah, that's plenty of time, especially if you're using multi-tracks. You want to make sure that you have enough time for them to trail out naturally instead of, a hard stop. And that's something you'll want to communicate to whoever's running these. Make sure they finish. Because if they're panned out and your drummer just quits there, that's a problem. Because it'll just stop abruptly and it'll sound weird. If it's just click tracks you're using, no problem. I mean, you can see they're already done at that point. So I'm going to show you how to make it stop automatically right at the end. But we'll get to that in a minute. So now you're ready for your next song. What you're going to go ahead and do is you're going to open the tempo track and then line it up exactly where you want the new tempo to be and then press add here. Pretty simple. You see this gray bar, the horizontal line here, that is going to raise up when the tempo is higher and it's going to lower when the tempo is lower. So the next song I believe is 78. And I'm going to have to check that in a second. So I have this highlighted. I type in 78, click, perfect. Now you can see we're in a bit of a slower tempo. Let me mute everything and I'll show you exactly what's going to happen. So I've got my metronome on and you hear how that kind of slowed down. So that means it worked. Yay. Perfect. So now we're going to go ahead and bring in our next song, which is Glorious Day. No, sorry, that was the first song. Next song is Death Was Arrested. So we're going to bring in that. And I'm going to follow the same process. It's worth mentioning that this song is in 6/8. You'll notice I didn't change it on the other one. And the reason is later I'm going to be using the arranger track. And if you move songs around in the arranger track, it has a really hard time messing with different time signatures. And for our purposes, it doesn't matter at all what time signature it's in. If we make our own click track and it's at the same BPM, doesn't matter. Won't stretch any files. Things won't get mutated in any way. Drag in the new click track and it will reflect the 6/8 time change. But past that, the DAW doesn't even need to know. So we're going to go ahead and copy these in. The same way, Command-C. Also a good point to close out of songs when you're done transferring them over. I haven't done it yet. You see Glorious Day is still here. By the time I'm done, if I hadn't closed any out, you'd have this big long list. You're trying to find the one you need, and it's going to be just more and more annoying each time. So I'll get to that in a minute, though. Acoustic set. So we're going to come in here right at the beginning. Okay, so you see those kind of stretched out, which is another point I do need to check the BPM. The BPM is correct. So what you can do here, and I do constantly, is you can just merge these. Now I pressed G, but you can also control-click and go down to merge event. The opposite is to dissolve audio part. So after you've merged events, you can dissolve, but yes. So the screen record isn't going to let me click that. So I did merge them by just pressing G. I did not set up a key for dissolve audio part. Maybe I'll do that at some point. But now you've got this, you've got 2 tracks here with 1 audio part each. So I'm going to command copy those, go back to acoustic set, delete these, and I'm just going to post these now. So command V. Perfect. So what I was saying earlier, the DAW doesn't reflect the 6/8 time change. You can see you still got 4 beats here. But if you'll notice, these are still landing on the grid correctly. It's just a matter of where the defining beat is. So if I play this,
intro 2 3 2 2 3,
you can see that was still 6/8. There was no problem there. And that'll play, I know it sounds strange, but it'll play with the DAW much nicer, having no time signature changes. So I'm just going to leave that. If you do need to put a time signature change, you can just line it up right where you want to. press Control, click on the timeline here, and insert time signature. I'd show you what that looks like, except my screen record won't allow me to anyway, so ignore that. Now I'm just going to drag that song in as well, and I think I have it saved on the desktop. Yes, I do. So you're just going to put it in the same track here. And the only reason we're sharing that track is just to save space. It doesn't matter. If you want to put it on its own track, perfectly fine, whatever. If you've got a small set, 3 songs, it's not going to make a huge difference anyway. For our purposes, I think we're doing 10 or 12 songs on this, so it would make a huge difference. Lots of unnecessary tracks. I'm going to go ahead and take Snap to Grid off so I can line this up. And if you don't understand what I'm doing right here, you definitely need to check out the other video, because I go into how to do what I'm doing right now and why you want to do what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to just zoom in. That's probably about right. We're going to find out. Oh, what am I doing? Goodness, I'm a scrub. Sorry, guys. Oops. Command Z, ignore that. If any of you are questioning whether or not I'm qualified to do what I'm doing, you're right. Okay, so 78.
2, 3, 2, 2, 3.
Sweet. We are all lined up. So I'm going to let it play for just a minute so we can double check.
1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3.
Perfect. That sounds good. So we've got our second song set, and you can unmerge these or dissolve these if you want. I can't right now because I'm screen recording, but I will do that. Something about those white long lines through the whole thing. I think that looks worse. I know I'm weird. But something I'm going to show you now is really kind of crucial to using multitracks in worship. So, like I said, you've got this big space here, and you don't really want to complicate things by either waiting all of this time,
Intro 2, 3.
because depending on how people are reacting in worship, that could either be a long time or a little time. And I know some of you know this, where you've been leading worship at maybe your home church, and people really respond to your worship leading, but then you go somewhere else and you've got nothing out of them, you know? So while this seems like a really small amount of time, that can be a really awkward pause if nobody felt that song. You know, if that song just crashed and burned, you're going to want to start the next song immediately, right? So what you can do is you can set a marker, and I need to turn Snap to Grid back on. I'm actually going to set the marker right here at the beginning. I was saying this could seem like a long time, but I know for us, this song usually goes pretty well, so this seems like a reasonable amount of time. I'm going to add a marker right here at the new song, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to name it after... Sorry, let me control-click that. Control-click that marker. Name it the next song, so that'll be easy to identify later. And then you're going to press this button here, Stop at Marker. And that's going to do exactly what it sounds like. Whenever it hits that point, it's going to stop. So if you're playing here, this is the end, fading out. It stops right there. So in the live situation, your band's hearing this. And
1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, you hit your last chord, you're resolving. The drummer would originally have to stop it and then line it up, start it again, depending on, you know, how the congregation or the group of people is responding. At this point, all he has to do is let it play out, and then it's going to stop on its own. So after he feels like the room's dying down a bit, he's got control again. The worship leader maybe gives him a nod. Press spacebar.
Intro 2, 3, 2, 2, 3.
Next song. That was such a nice feature. It doesn't take any looking or recalculating in a live situation. After I found that, it blew my mind. Simple thing makes a world of difference. So we've got that. I'm actually just going to fast forward now to having a whole song set up, because I've already showed you kind of how to add in multiple songs, change the tempo, add markers. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to where I have the entire set done and show you some other really cool features. Okay, and we're back. So I fast forwarded a little bit. It's been a few hours actually putting these songs together. I wish there was a faster way, but there really wasn't. Some of these I hadn't done yet. So you're seeing some new things. The arranger track is here now, and the only reason I didn't show you how to do that is because the screen record is keeping me from clicking the correct thing. So sorry about that. Markers, you see all of the markers are here, and they are all set to stop at marker. So whenever you hit that point, the cursor will stop moving, playback halts. So all you have to do to set up this arranger track underneath it, and I'll explain what it is in a minute, but right now I'll show you how to set it up, is control click any one of these markers, and there's an option to create arranger tracks from sections. Or sorry, create arranger sections from markers. I swear I can read. So all you'd have to do to get what you're looking at now is to click that button. No extra steps between there. It just pops up just like this. So what that will do is if you click one of these, then click this I over here, which I'm assuming means info. I'm not totally sure. You have this nice little list over here. This list does many things. So for now, you see our cursor's at 0, which is the beginning of Glorious Day, and that's what this little triangle guy is representing. So if I were to click on the left side of Death Was Arrested, we're moving forward. So keep forward, keep going. So it's really easy to switch between tracks if you're in a rehearsal setting and your worship leader says, hey, let's go back over Build My Life. Click here, you're ready. Before I found this section, you'll notice this is a really big and wide session. If I'm trying to click at the beginning of Build My Life, I might end up here. And then, we're waiting. And it's not a long time. You'll get there eventually. Right now, we made it. But in a rehearsal setting when there's multiple people watching and waiting to go, it's just better to be able to click and then go. The other cool thing is you can double click and it'll start right away. So if your worship leader says, hey, we need to go over Build My Life, go ahead and go.
Intro 2.
That fast. I mean, just instant. The absolute coolest thing about the arranger, and I think this is actually what Studio One had in mind for its use, is when you're setting up a song, maybe you're writing a song at the Studio One or at your computer. You can name each section of the song with the arranger track and say, this is my chorus, this is my verse, so on and so forth, and then you can move them around. So you could maybe you write the bridge and you decide, that'd be a really good verse 1 instead. You grab it, click it, move it in front of the chorus, and now it's your verse. You could rename it, But it's really easy to move different kinds of sections around, and everything that falls vertically in between this whole arranger section will move with it. So I'll show you what I mean here in a second. I hope I'm not being super unclear. But if you look back over here on the arranger track, this is a set list, right? So let's say the worship leader says, hey, can we do Build My Life right after Living Hope? Yeah, if you didn't have this arranger track, that would be just a nightmare. Just totally ridiculous to move all of these things, reset your tempos. Just unbelievable. But now, all you have to do is click on it over here. You're going to click and hold, bring it down. Make sure you're on Insert and not Replace. You see the difference there? There's the blue line that says Insert, so I'm going to drop it there. Just a few seconds later, you're ready to go. So let me make sure that worked out correctly. I think it's good. Go to Build My Life. So that's Living Hope. We're at the end. It's going to stop at the marker, and then we're ready for Build My Life. So let's say your congregation's still excited about that one. They're still worshiping, still clapping. Then whenever they're dying down,
Intro 2.
Ready to go.
4.
So a minute ago, that was near the front of the set, and now it's clear at the end. And like I said before, that would take so much time to set up before. Now they have this neat feature that will take care of it for you. All right. One last thing I wanted to cover in this video. Multitracks. They're simple to use with just click and multitracks. You pan the click, cues left, pan all those tracks right. But if you're in a situation where you're missing a key instrument, like an instrument that really needs its own output, you have an awesome way of setting that up. So to give you a little background, my band, Heart and Mind Worship, we don't have a bassist or a rhythm guitarist. We just have 4 of us, drummer, keys, me on acoustic, and a good friend of mine on lead. He'll play rhythm where he needs to, play lead where he needs to, but we are still missing a lot in every song. So what we started doing is we would drag in these tracks. So right now I'm going to drag in a bass track for Build My Life, and I'm just going to get that shaped up real quick. So now it's in the right spot. I'm going to rename it and give it a nice vibrant color so I never forget where it's at. What we're going to do is we're going to set up its own output for that. And how we're going to do that is we're going to go to Preferences. Now, assuming you have an interface with multiple outputs, that means outputs more than just left and right. So if you have an interface that is only going to your speakers and you don't have any more plugs on it, unfortunately, you can't do this. But if you have an interface like mine, I have the 4-input audio box from PreSonus, really nice unit. And also live, we play with the XR18 from Behringer, and it is an excellent interface. I mean, you can use it for all kinds of purposes. We use it for our live stuff, and it kind of acts as an interface live. But anyway, enough of that. So I have multiple outputs. I can route my bass through one of them. So I'm going to go to Song Setup. And if it doesn't take you immediately to outputs, you just have this little flip menu here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a mono output. So this means I'm going to send something from the DAW physically out of whatever output I set. Right now it's set to 3 because I've already got my outputs for left and right speaker, my monitors here. I've already got those set 1 and 2. So the next available one is 3. I'm going to go ahead and name this bass. Oops, that is not how you spell bass. There we are. So now my bass, or I have an output for my bass. It's still not routed there, and I'll get to that in a minute. But I have a separate output for bass that is running out of line 3. So I'm going to go ahead and press OK. You got to make sure you apply or OK, one of the two. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click, bring open my mixer, my physical mixer, digital mixer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a send. So you're going to press this little plus here. It's going to bring down a drop down menu. And you've got options to either add a bus channel, add a bus channel, add an FX channel, or you can go out of your mains or your bass. So right now I'm going to create a send to my bass channel. Now what that's going to do is it's going to fire off, and let me see if I can bring up that output. Perfect. Okay, so I see my bass output here. If I solo bass, you're going to see it metering on both. So my bass is currently being sent to both. Now, if you don't want it in your click tracks and your multi-tracks, hint, you don't. If it has its own output, you don't want it going anywhere else because you want to have complete control over it. So what I'm going to do, what I'm going to show you first is that if you bring this down, you're going to lose it everywhere. And that's because this blue here means that it's post fader, which means that if I bring it down here, that level is going to translate to this send as well. So what you need to do is you're going to click this little guy here. It's going to change it to pre-fader. You noticed the level came up immediately. That means that this send is happening before it hits this channel strip here. So whatever level I set here is unaffected by this. It is pre-fader. And if that makes sense, then you're all set. You can do that for as many outputs as you need. For our Behringer XR18, you can actually set any of the physical inputs to be digital inputs and be fed from the DAW like that. So we do that for our bass, for rhythm guitar, sometimes piano if our pianist can't make it. Really at that point, we're almost a fake band, so that might be a little much. But that's all. We probably won't actually use this for this acoustic set, but I did want to make sure I showed you guys how to use it. So if you have any questions about anything you saw, if I was super unclear about something, please comment in the comment section. If none of this made sense to you, you might want to check out my first video. That would probably clear things up. Or if there are any other questions that you would have or maybe want me to do a video on, I'd certainly be happy to try to tackle some problems you're having. Other than that, thank you for watching, and subscribe so you don't miss anything from me. Bye.